If you're a homemaker and you're watching me, you know that homemaking is not easy. But when we have opportunities to try something new, this just makes the journey a little more exciting, interesting, giving you that challenge of trying something and watching to see how it turns out, and especially when you know that it's going to work for the good of your family. And that's why in today's video, I thought to share the process of how I am making tallow for the first time, because I'm hoping to do this a little more often now that I got to learn that tallow is a healthier form of fat to use rather than the usual fats and oils that we buy on our counters, in the shop, in the supermarket, in the store. Together with this, it's a busy day in my life because it turned out busier than I thought, and I thought let me just share the process as we go along. In case you're new here, my name is Clara, a homeschooling mom, a mom of two, a work-from-home mom, a mom who is passionate about matters womanhood and the woman, and viewing this from a biblical perspective. You're welcome to this channel and space on the internet. So I'm beginning with working on a very simple sourdough starter Mahamri recipe. As you know, I've been working with sourdough in the recent past now that I realized it's much healthier than the usual recipes that we make without it, and so it's a journey that I trust you will also enjoy in case you're not already working with sourdough. And this particular Mahamri recipe, I'll link it in the description below because I have it on our other channel. The only difference with this one is I added 1 teaspoon of bicarbonate of soda in the dry ingredients, as well as melted butter in the wet ingredients rather than rubbing them in the dry ingredients. I liked what the result was. They were slightly softer than the usual sourdough ones, and because it's a healthier one, with sourdough, I keep working to improve it. So I had bulk fermented it overnight, working with 4 cups of flour, half a cup of sugar, a teaspoon of cardamom spice, 1 teaspoon of salt, and of course the butter, a cup of water. You can also use warm water, that is, or milk. And of course we had our oil for deep frying, together with 1 teaspoon of bicarbonate. We really loved the Mahamri recipe, so you could try that addition rather than using the butter when it's not melted. You could try melting it, and you could try adding a teaspoon of bicarbonate, and I'm sure you're going to enjoy the same. This is morning, so I'm working on those mandazi or mahamri together with our tea that is also cooking on the other side, on one of the stoves. You can see right there, one of the burners rather. And we were going to have this for breakfast. This turned out to be a busier day because our daughters are on break. We call it half term in our country. So we have a break for about a week. So I just began my Monday on a busy note now that I wanted to work on tallow later on. So the Mahamri turned out really nice, and we really enjoyed them. And you could just see a bit of how they look on the inside. So along with this Mahamri, because after using my sourdough starter, I thought to feed it. And in case you're wondering how to make your own sourdough starter at home, I will also link in the description a video of where I did my sourdough starter from scratch, and I have been maintaining it and using it for a few months now. So I fed it that night after working on my Mahamri, and now this morning I got to work on this bread recipe that I have allowed to rest for about 30 minutes, and then just getting to knead it within the bowl so that I could let it now bulk ferment the whole day so that I could bake it in the evening. Again, just working on sourdough because now I know it's a healthier way of baking or working on your recipes. This bread recipe I haven't shared on the other channel, but I hope I could do that soon because I'm liking it. I just work with 8 cups of flour because I'm going to work on 4 loaves, half a cup of sugar, 2 teaspoons of salt, 1.5 teaspoons bicarbonate of soda, 1.5 cups of sourdough, which I mix in the bowl first. That's the wet ingredients. 2 tablespoons rather of melted margarine or butter, 2 eggs, and some liquid. I will usually start with 2 cups of liquid, then add in the dry ingredients, mix until we get a sticky dough. Adding the 3rd cup or half cup towards the end until I get to a sticky dough. So once I had allowed it to continue fermenting, I went for my usual prayer walk. If you're new on this channel, usually I go for a walk for exercise, down a hill and up a hill, and then in the process pray at the same time. So it's berry season, wild berry season, and I thought just to share that this is part of what I do as I prayer walk. I like to pick those berries now that we live in this lovely countryside, walking down a hill where the land is just not cultivated. You can go in there. Of course, we go with my husband because I don't like to go alone now that it's gotten very thick. But within those bushes, there are many berries that I will often pick, just a handful, what I can handle, and then I come with it up, so that, of course, wrapping it in a leaf, and then I come up and I share between my daughters and I and my husband as well. Sometimes he will also pick, but this season I'm the one who has been picking, and I thought just to set them aside so that I could work on a recipe with them in the afternoon, something that I'm trying. And at the time I was showing you the cardamom, we had our breakfast. I went for my walk after breakfast, now that we were having this half term. The program is a little bit flexible. Then I came and sat down to catch up with editing of my book. In case you don't know, I have a book I have written based on the Proverbs 31 passage, expositional in nature, a woman of noble character, how can I become one? Where I go through each of the chapters, just sharing as the Lord has enabled me now that I've been working with younger women through the Proverbs 31 passage for a number of years now. So I wrote this book, and now we are out of stock of the first copy. So I thought, let me sit down and edit it before taking it back to the publisher so that we could have newer copies. So having done some editing for about 2 hours, I came back to the kitchen to work on milk. Usually on Mondays we get our supply of milk. We get some little milk every day of the week, but usually Monday we get more liters to work with. So I will usually boil most of it. Sometimes we will make yogurt every other week, and also every other week we work on a little cheese. As you know, in our country, cheese is so expensive. So when I'm not working on yogurt, I will take at least 1.5 liters of that to make some mozzarella cheese. Now that's the one we will work with mostly for pizzas. My daughters also love to make cheese sauce and other things that we can work with cheese, whether it is sandwiches or such. So I just make a little bowl of cheese and keep it in the freezer. So what I began on the other pan, I'm boiling most of the other milk. This one I have boiled it until it's just hot enough. I can still put in my finger, but it's not burning my finger. That's how I get to taste until I get a thermometer, something I keep forgetting to buy, but it's working with me, just working with a clean finger. So once I've done that, I will add in some vinegar. I will add in also some citric acid. Having switched off the milk, I forgot to switch off as I was adding, but I like to switch off. I add mix so that the citric acid can dissolve for just a minute or so, and then cover so that it can rest. And then I'm going to gather the curds together after about 5 minutes, and then sieve so that the whey can separate from the curds. And then I will now try to work on those curds, bringing them together, squeeze out the whey, and then have half of the whey heating up until it's very hot. Dissolve some salt in it, about a teaspoon of salt, usually half a teaspoon to 1 teaspoon of salt. I will then add the cheese to the salted whey so that it could even gather together really well and then transfer immediately. Like at this point, I have transferred immediately to some very cold water with ice cubes so that now it can hold together really well. So once I have done that for a few minutes, I will just cover it in cling film and transfer it to my freezer. So this is what I try to do, just to get us a little cheese, as much as we need, but we hope in future we can get to have a little more milk to make more cheese. But meanwhile, we just work with recipes that don't need a lot of cheese. Thankfully, in our country, most of our recipes don't. But usually we want to try something with cheese. At least we have some that we keep working on, if not every week, but at least every other week. Now that we also love yogurt, so the other weeks we will make yogurt instead. Now we come to our tallow. Now, most people don't know tallow in my country, because if you're like me, and of course most of us, we were taught that fat from cows, from animals, is very unhealthy. It has a lot of cholesterol. I mean, you know all the things we were told in school. And it's only recent that we are beginning to learn that fat from animal is actually the healthiest, probably. It's very healthy. And so I've been studying a little on how to work on fat that comes from animals. And this one I'm working on beef, so that by the time I'm done with it, that is what is called tallow. Now, because most people don't know this, we have been working with our butcher, requesting him to give us some fat, but I think he has other customers who make soap with it, so he's not been giving us, but we hope we will be able to get some. But he was able to give us a little. This is probably about a kilogram or 1.5 kilograms at most, but I thought this is enough for me to just try my hand at making tallow and invite you along, so that in case you would like to start this journey, you can also do it as well. So I cut it into small pieces, as you saw, added water, about 2 liters, though I kept adding, and then covered it and just took it to the fire. I like to use firewood for such. Now that it's going to cook for about 4 hours, I allowed it to cook for 4 to 5 hours actually. And when you see the water almost disappearing, evaporating, add in some more water so that you can get as much of the fat as possible, and you will see what will happen. So I took a break now that it was getting to the late afternoon, just to make some smoothie for my family with the berries. As you saw, I was trying this, some bananas, some berries. I also added in milk and squeezed in half a lemon and some sugar. So I got to blend this, and then we had it. Of course, I wouldn't have minded adding a mango in that mixture, but it wasn't too bad. And people were able to do that with, a snack, whether it was a Mahamri or whatever was around. We were able to have that. So as our tallow is continuing, at this point it was time for us to make supper. Again, I got these bananas from our garden. Thankfully, we do a little minimal gardening, really, what we can manage, and thank God bananas are not very care intensive. You just plant and you start enjoying the bananas. So I had some bananas which I boiled and mashed, as you see, with some salt, having removed any excess water. And then I sauteed some vegetables, quite a number of vegetables. You can see there is carrot, there is courgette, there is, of course, tomato, onion. And this recipe, why I'm not sharing the details, is because I'm going to share on our other channel, Recipes and Hospitality with Clara. In case you don't know, I share the details of what I do with these recipes. And so I mixed my mashed banana with the sauteed vegetables together with some little salt as well as an egg. Once I had combined that, picked a tablespoonful, as you can see, dipped it in some flour just to make it easier to pat it to make a ball like I have done. And then I did that to the whole mixture, and then we went ahead and shallow fried them in some cooking oil. And that's what we basically had for supper. It's something that my daughters love to make a lot. And so I thought, why not share this in case someone else would love to just make their bananas in a creative, more interesting way. So just ensured they had cooked on one side, turned them over so that they could cook on the other. And then we were good to go with our banana recipe that we really enjoyed and that I'm hoping you will enjoy. Of course, you can serve with something else. You can serve with a sauce, but I know you're going to enjoy this. Even without a sauce, you know, bananas are very exciting and interesting to eat. I need to share that I also didn't share that when I was working on my bread recipe, because Monday, when I know I don't have a lot of things, you know, a lot of breakfasts, one of the things I do on Mondays is to do a minimum meal prep, especially when I know I have run out of some of the breakfasts. And so this is why I worked on that bread recipe. I did also the sourdough mahamri. And at this point, when I was working on the bread recipe, I also worked on sourdough cake. Again, a recipe that I'm going to share on our other channel that is very simple to make, but I'm going to share that in a short while. So you can see this is evening after supper. My bread has risen. I transferred it into 4 tins, and because it was late, I was so busy I forgot to allow it in the tins for at least an hour, because I like to allow them in the tins for an hour, but somehow I forgot that, so I skipped that step. Well, but I was just happy they had a bulk ferment and transferred them to the oven to bake. So back to our cake. I did my basic cake recipe, though I've doubled it. It's usually 2 cups, but now I've worked with 4 cups of flour, 1 cup of sugar. You can do 3/4 cups, half a teaspoon salt, half a teaspoon bicarbonate of soda, and 1.5 teaspoons baking powder, though my basic one is usually just 4 teaspoons of baking powder. But because I was mixing with bicarbonate because of sourdough, that's how I did 1.5 teaspoons baking powder and half a teaspoon bicarbonate. That's the difference between this and my basic one. And then 3/4 cup sourdough starter, 1 cup cooking oil, 2 eggs, and then a cup of milk, and then I finished off with water. I divided it into 2, and in one of the bowls I put vanilla and lemon rind to give it that lemon vanilla taste, and then in the other one I added vanilla and orange oil. If I had an orange, I would also have added orange rind in that one to give it that orange vanilla taste. Transferred to my baking pans. As you know, on the other channel we do bake without an oven, so that we demonstrate that you can bake with or without an oven. I explain more in that recipe in case you're interested. Where I'm working with this smaller burner, I just reduce it to the lowest as it's been designed by your manufacturer. It should bake. And this one usually is a bit harder, the wider plates, because you have to take the knob as though you're switching off and reduce it to that very low flame, because that's what will bake your cake. My first cake took about an hour to bake. This one took about 1.5 hours. Took really long because sometimes it will depend on your flame. Now that it's very hard to get a standard flame, but many times it could take an hour, 1 hour, 10 minutes, 1 hour, 20 minutes. This one took 1 hour, 30 minutes, and then of course turned over to brown on the top side for an extra 10 minutes for each of the cakes. Now we are back to our tallow. I kept adding water, like I said, in case it was getting finished, as I made sure a low fire was going so that it kept simmering to get as much of the fat out of that fatty parts of the beef. So what I did is I sieved in a metal sieve. As you know, this is hot, and most of it of course is fat, together with some of the little water that was left. So sieved to get rid of those pieces of meat that now I had finished working with them. Of course, if I knew what else to do with them, I would, but at least I had gotten what I needed, the fat out of them. So once I had done this, the next thing I would do is I would just cover. It's still hot. I will cover, place in my pantry where it is a bit cold, and then allow it to solidify. So we are going to come back to it tomorrow. Well, when I did this video, it was just after supper. I was going to sleep, so I was going to come back here tomorrow. Then I'll tell you what I did. I need to say that this way of doing, I got it from a channel called the Hola Homestead. I think she had also gotten it from this lady, homesteading with the Zimmermans, but the homesteading with the Zimmermans, she did it on Instagram in one of her stories. So I studied what they were doing, and this is what I'm trying out. It's not original with me, I must say that, but I acknowledge I got it from those two homesteading channels. So that's how our cakes look like. There's something I really love about sourdough cakes. They have this very delightful texture, as well as those nice air holes, you know, that are created with the sourdough. And I can tell you, we really enjoyed the cakes, especially if you're one who doesn't like the really sour taste. You may not feel it a lot in the cakes, but you know, at least I have the benefits of sourdough breaking down my dough during the bulk ferment, making my recipes even healthier than if I was not using sourdough. So now we come back to our tallow. You can see it has solidified. Well, it's very little. I was slightly disappointed to realize, oh, it doesn't form so much. But now I knew when I start working on this seriously, I will need to be getting a lot of the fatty part, you know, of the cow. So I just got to separate it now, because it's easier to do this because the fat had come on the surface and solidified. So separated that from the water, you know, that liquid, then transferred it to a clean pan, added some water, and then transferred it now to my gas cooker, because here I was not going to allow it to boil for too long. Once I had allowed it to melt together with the water and to boil, I just gave it about 15 minutes on low flame, and then transferred it back to my pantry for it again to solidify. So this is the next day, do I say day 3, where you can see my tallow has solidified. What I have seen with the other channels is to make it more pure, they will keep doing that process of separating it from the water, adding clean water again, allowing it to solidify, transferring it again, separating from the water, transferring it, because the point is, especially if you want to use your tallow for body lotion, I'm yet to learn those skills, or you know, some of these, it's the more you do that, the cleaner and the purer it becomes. But for me, because mine is for cooking, this is the end of my rendering my fat to make tallow. I think this is sufficient. So the only thing I'm going to do is clean this pan so that I don't create a lot of dishes. So I cleaned it, and then I rinsed off my tallow with clean water. As you can see, I'm rinsing it with clean water and ensuring there's no water now in the pan except the one I have used to rinse, you know, the little on the surface. And then I'll show you what I will do once I had done this. So once I had rinsed the tallow, now I transferred it onto my flame on low fire to allow it to fully melt. No water this time. So you can see, because of the water in the tallow, it's making a lot of noise. And this noise is going to increase because, as you know, oil doesn't make noise. Fat, you know, when it's made into oil, but it's the water. So that shows the water is slowly evaporating. So I had put it on high flame. So the longer you take, as you can hear, the less it becomes. And at this point, the oil is now quiet. The fat, really melted fat, is now quiet. So our tallow is ready, because you need to get rid of the water for it to last longer. But if you have the water within your tallow, it's going to make it gets spoiled faster. So that's why once it has calmed like that, I switched off and then I allowed it to just cool until it was warm. Because remember, I don't want it to solidify in the pan. I just want it warm enough to transfer it to a suitable container. Of course, I think a glass jar would be best, but well, I don't have one. So you can see I'm even holding my pan or sufuria. It has cooled significantly. It's just warm. I just made sure it doesn't solidify so that I could pour it easily, but it will solidify perhaps in an hour or so. I forget the timings. So once I'd transferred it there, I just allowed it on my counter so that it could solidify in that container. And so we are going to come back, but I'm really excited that what we see happening, especially with others who have learned this, really works. And thankfully, if I've done with a little tallow, I can do that with a lot of tallow. So this is like maybe an hour or two, I'm not sure. You know, when you just leave on the counter and you leave, and we have our tallow ready. It may not be as pure. You can see it has a bit of particles down there. And I probably needed to use a cheesecloth or something to get rid of those. But you can be sure this is good for us to use. And now I will just transfer it to the fridge. I think if you make a lot, you can even keep in the freezer for, I think it can stay very long. And I have learned a new skill. I'm really grateful for that. So thank you so much for joining me. I trust what I shared today was a blessing to you. And as is always our custom on this channel, we will pray and just trust the Lord to be with us, especially on our homemaking journey, so that we will glorify Him as we serve others. Father, please be with me and my viewer. Grant that you will be glorified as we continue to journey in serving you, serving our families, serving our households, serving others. Be glorified, oh God, in our lives. In Jesus' name we pray. Amen.